Close your eyes for a second and imagine this. It's 70,000 years ago. The earth is wild. Herds of mammoths roam the grasslands. Giant kangaroos leap across the plains of Australia. Saber-toothed cats prowl in the shadows. And humans? Well, we're not alone. Back then, you weren't the only human. The world was home to at least 6 different human species. You had the sturdy Neanderthals in Europe, the mysterious Denisovans in Asia, the tiny hobbit humans called Homo floresiensis living on an island in Indonesia, and others. We, Homo sapiens, were just one species in this diverse family tree. Now fast forward to today. Look around. There's only one left. Us. Every other human species vanished. Neanderthals are gone. Denisovans are gone. The hobbits are gone. Somehow, fragile, skinny, unremarkable Homo sapiens survived. And not only survived, but went on to dominate the entire planet. How did that happen? Why us? That's the mystery Yuval Noah Harari explores in Sapiens. And once you see the answer, you'll never look at humanity the same way again. Welcome to the Book Scoop, where we take the world's best books, scoop out the wisdom, and serve it up in a way you can use today. Today we're diving into Sapiens, a brief history of humankind by Yuval Noah Harari. Now, this isn't a quick self-help guide or a business manual. It's something bigger, a sweeping story of us, where we came from, how we built civilization, why we think and behave the way we do, and maybe most importantly, where we might be headed next. Here's the big idea. Humans didn't conquer the world because we're stronger or faster. We conquered it because we can imagine. Our ability to tell stories and believe them together let us cooperate in huge numbers, far beyond the scale of any other species. That single ability shaped everything: religion, nations, money, human rights, even companies and brands. And it all started with a turning point about 70,000 years ago, what Harari calls the cognitive revolution. So let's begin our journey there. Lesson 1. The cognitive revolution. Let's paint a picture. You're a Homo sapiens, walking across the African savanna. Your tribe is maybe 30 to 50 people strong. You forage for berries, hunt antelope, and share whatever you find. Life is simple. But here's the catch. Other human species are doing the same thing. A Neanderthal tribe might be just a valley away. And if you compared them to you, they'd seem more impressive. Stronger muscles, bigger brains, better at surviving harsh winters. If it came to a one-on-one fight, you'd probably lose. So why are you the one still here, telling this story 70,000 years later? The answer lies in your head. Something happened to the sapiens' brain around that time, a mysterious shift scientists still debate. Maybe it was a genetic mutation. Maybe it was the gradual wiring of language. But whatever it was, it gave sapiens a new superpower. The ability to imagine things that don't exist and then convince others to believe in them too. That's what Harari calls the cognitive revolution. The power of fiction. Here's the thing. Lots of animals communicate. Monkeys can warn of a predator. Bees can tell each other where to find flowers. But only humans can say, there's a lion spirit guarding this valley. If we respect it, we'll be safe. That lion spirit doesn't exist. But if everyone in the tribe believes the story, it shapes how they behave. Suddenly, you can unite around invisible ideas. And that changes everything. This ability to create and share fiction lets sapiens cooperate in ways no other species could. Neanderthals could work together in small family groups. Ants and bees cooperate too, but only in rigid, programmed ways. Sapiens? We could invent flexible stories that allowed us to cooperate with strangers, scale up to hundreds, then thousands, and eventually millions of people. That's our secret weapon. The first shared myths. Think about some of the first big stories. Maybe it was about gods of the sky or spirits in the river. Later, it became tribes, clans, nations. Over time, we invented money, laws, corporations, and human rights. None of these exist in nature. You can't cut open a person and find human rights inside. You can't point to a tree and say, That's the nation of France. These things only exist because we all agree to believe in them. And yet, because we believe in them, they become real. They shape behavior. They move armies. They build civilizations. That's the magic of shared myths. Modern examples. Let's bring it closer to home. Look at the logo on your phone. Maybe it's an Apple logo. That tiny bitten apple has no real power. But because millions of people believe it represents quality, design, and status, it's one of the most powerful symbols in the world. Or take money. A 100 bill is just paper with ink. But because you and I both believe it's valuable, we can trade it for food, shelter, or even a plane ticket across the world. Or think about passports. That little booklet is just paper and ink too, but it decides whether you're waved through an airport or stopped at the border. All of these things are modern myths, shared fictions that only exist because we agree they do. The downside of stories. But here's the twist. Our ability to tell stories is a double-edged sword. It's what allowed humans to spread across the planet. But it's also what fueled wars, oppression, and inequality. The same imagination that created human rights also created racism. The same stories that unite us can divide us. That's why Harari says Sapiens didn't just rise to the top of the food chain. We leapt there so fast that we didn't stop to think about what it meant for the world around us. When Sapiens reached new continents, giant animals disappeared. Mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant sloths gone within a few centuries. Not because we were stronger, but because we were organized. We could plan, cooperate, and hunt like no other species. So what's the takeaway for us? It's this. Your life is built on stories. The job title on your LinkedIn profile, the brand names in your closet, the government ID in your wallet, they're all stories. Stories you've agreed to live by. That doesn't make them bad. In fact, shared stories are what make civilization possible. But it does mean you can ask, which stories are worth believing? Which ones serve you and which ones don't? If your story is that success equals money, then your whole life will orbit around dollars. If your story is that success equals meaning or connection, your life will look very different. The cognitive revolution reminds us, we're not just characters in someone else's story, we're authors too. And once you realize that, you can start editing the story you live by. The cognitive revolution gave Sapiens a new superpower: imagination. We could invent myths, believe them together, and cooperate in massive numbers. That ability made us rulers of the planet, but also responsible for its greatest destruction. The world you live in today runs on stories, and the stories you choose shape the life you live. Lesson 2. The Agricultural Revolution. Let's rewind the clock to about 12,000 years ago. You wake up as a hunter-gatherer. The air is cool, the sun is rising, and your tribe is already stirring. You grab a spear, or maybe a basket, and set out with your group. The day is simple. Look for food, share it, rest, tell stories. You'll spend a few hours foraging and hunting, and once you've gathered enough, the rest of the day is yours. Some days, you feast. Other days, you come up short. But overall, you live with variety. You eat berries one day, fish the next, nuts, mushrooms, roots, wild fruits, the occasional animal. You walk miles a day, your body lean and strong. Now fast forward a few generations. Something huge has changed. You're no longer roaming the forest. You're not chasing antelope across the plains. Instead, you're standing in the same muddy patch of land, day after day, pulling weeds from the soil, planting seeds, and praying for rain. You've become a farmer. The great progress that wasn't on the surface, this looks like progress. Farming produces more food. It can feed more people per acre than foraging ever could. Populations explode. Villages form. But here's the paradox. While humanity as a species grew stronger, individual lives often became harder. Yuval Noah Harari calls the agricultural revolution history's biggest fraud. Why? Because it promised comfort but delivered struggle. Let's break down why. Diets got worse. Foragers ate a wide mix of foods. Farmers narrowed their diets to one or two staples: wheat, rice, maize. That meant more calories, but less nutrition. Bones from ancient farmers show signs of malnutrition, stunted growth, and tooth decay compared to their forager ancestors. Work got harder. Farming meant endless labor. Planting, weeding, harvesting, storing, guarding. Unlike foragers who worked maybe 30 hours a week, farmers worked from sunup to sundown. Disease spread. Settling in villages meant crowded living. Add in domesticated animals, cows, pigs, chickens, and suddenly humans were living with diseases that would have been rare in wild tribes. Plagues, smallpox, measles, flu, all products of farming life. Inequality emerged. Farming produced surpluses. Surpluses led to storage. Storage led to ownership. And ownership led to hierarchy. Some people hoarded food, others labored. Classes formed. Elites ruled. Ordinary farmers often lived worse than their hunter-gatherer ancestors. So if farming made individuals worse off, why did we stick with it? The trap of wheat. Here's where Harari flips the script. He says, humans didn't domesticate wheat. Wheat domesticated us. Think about it. Wheat is a fragile plant. It needs constant care, protection from weeds, pests, drought, and frost. It can't grow without humans clearing fields, hauling water, guarding it. In return, wheat spreads across the globe. From wheat's perspective, this was a brilliant survival strategy. But for humans, it was a trap. Once tribes invested in farming, they couldn't easily go back. They'd built homes, raised children, stored grain. Walking away meant abandoning years of labor. So even when life was harder, they stayed, hoping the next harvest would be better. Sound familiar? That's the psychology of sunk cost. It's the same reason people stay in jobs they hate, relationships that don't work, or routines that drain them. Once you've invested, it's hard to walk away. The rise of civilizations. The agricultural revolution didn't just change diets and work, it changed society itself. Surplus led to specialization. With more food than a tribe could eat in one day, some people didn't have to farm. Suddenly, you had priests, soldiers, scribes, rulers. Entire classes of people emerged who lived off the labor of farmers. Hierarchy grew. Foragers were fairly egalitarian, but farming created haves and have-nots. The owners of land and grain silos held power. Everyone else worked for them. Cities rose. Farming supported larger populations. Villages became towns. Towns became cities. Cities became civilizations. Written language, law codes, temples, and empires followed. All because farming made it possible to feed thousands in one place. At first glance, this looks like progress. But Harari asks, was it progress for individuals or just for the species? For the average farmer, life was harder, dirtier, sicker, and less free than it had been as a hunter-gatherer. The illusion of more. Here's the modern lesson. More isn't always better. The agricultural revolution is a warning about chasing growth at all costs. Yes, farming gave us more food, more people, more culture, but it also locked us into cycles of labor, inequality, and disease. Think about your own life. Have you ever sacrificed freedom for the illusion of stability? Have you ever thought, if I just work harder now, next year will be easier, only to find next year brings even more work? That's the same trap farmers faced. Always one more harvest. Always one more investment. A modern parallel, the office farm. Here's an analogy Harari doesn't use, but it fits perfectly. Farming was humanity's first office job. Think about it. Foragers were freelancers. They had variety, freedom, and flexible hours. Farmers became employees tied to the same plot, the same routine, the same back-breaking tasks, day after day. And just like modern workers, many farmers dreamed of freedom but couldn't walk away. They were locked in by mortgages, land, debt, grain stores, and responsibility. Children. So the next time you feel chained to your desk, remember, you're not alone. You're standing in a 12,000 years old tradition of people stuck in routines they didn't entirely choose. The long-term payoff. But here's the kicker. While farming was bad for individuals, it was great for humanity as a whole. It allowed civilizations to rise. Civilizations created culture, art, science, technology. Without farming, there'd be no pyramids, no Shakespeare, no internet. That's the paradox of the agricultural revolution. It made individual lives worse in the short term, but laid the foundation for everything we call human civilization. So what do we do with this lesson today? Here's a challenge. Take a look at your own routines. Where are you farming instead of foraging? Where are you tied to something that drains you just because you've already invested so much? Maybe it's a job. Maybe it's a habit. Maybe it's a lifestyle. Ask yourself, is this making me happy or just keeping me busy? The agricultural revolution reminds us that growth without happiness isn't really progress. The real wealth is freedom, health, and meaning, not just more. The agricultural revolution was the great bait and switch of history. It promised abundance but delivered harder work, worse health, and inequality. It turned free-ranging foragers into chained farmers. And yet, it also built the foundation for civilization itself. The lesson? More isn't always better. And sometimes, the smaller, freer life is actually richer. Lesson 3. The Unification of Humankind. Let's fast forward to about 5,000 years ago. Picture a bustling marketplace in Mesopotamia. Merchants are shouting, traders are haggling, and goods from faraway lands are being exchanged. Someone offers a sack of grain. Another wants a jar of olive oil. Someone else is holding brightly colored cloth. Here's the question. How do all these strangers, people who have never met, who don't trust each other, who speak different languages, manage to trade without chaos? How do they cooperate? That's the heart of this lesson. Harari calls it the unification of humankind. It's the story of how billions of strangers came to cooperate through shared myths, systems of belief that exist only in our imagination, but bind us tighter than blood. The three biggest unifying myths: money, empires, religions. Money, the greatest story ever told. Imagine trying to trade a goat for a bag of wheat. It's awkward. What if the wheat farmer doesn't need a goat? What if he wants shoes instead? You'd have to find a shoemaker willing to take a goat. That's the inefficiency of barter. Money solved this. First, it was shiny metals. Then coins. Then paper bills. Today, it's digital numbers in your bank account and even cryptocurrencies. But here's the thing. Money has no value in itself. A $100 bill is just paper. Bitcoin is just code. Their power comes entirely from belief. Money works because everyone trusts the story. Everyone agrees that tomorrow, someone else will also accept it. That makes money the most universal language on earth. Think about it. You can fly to Tokyo, Paris, or Nairobi and still buy a meal if you have the right currency. You don't need to know the culture. You don't need to know the language. You just need money. Harari says it simply. Money is the most successful story humans have ever invented. It's the only story everyone believes. Empires, the bridges and the brutality. Now picture an empire. Maybe Rome, maybe China's Han dynasty, maybe the British Empire. At first glance, empires look like brute force. Conquerors invade, armies expand, kings demand taxes. But Harari points out, empires also unified humanity. They spread laws, languages, technologies, and ideas across huge territories. Roman roads connected Europe. The Mongols spread trade routes across Asia. The British Empire spread English, which today is a global language. Empires were brutal, yes. They enslaved, exploited, and destroyed cultures. But they also created bridges. They forced diverse peoples into the same system, sometimes violently, sometimes peacefully. And in the process, they knitted together the human story. Without empires, the global world we know today would never have formed. Religions, the shared moral codes. And then we have religion. Early religions were local, tied to animism and small tribal spirits. But as societies grew, local gods weren't enough. Enter universal religions, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism. These weren't just local. They claimed to apply to everyone, everywhere. That universality was key. It allowed strangers across continents to see themselves as part of the same moral community. Religion unified billions under shared values and codes of behavior. Think of it like moral glue. Religion didn't just explain the world. It gave people a sense of meaning, order, and obligation to each other. That's why Harari defines religion as a system of human norms and values founded on a superhuman order. But just like money and empires, religion cut both ways. It united people in cooperation, but also divided them in conflict. Wars, crusades, persecutions, all fueled by the same stories that otherwise brought order. Modern parallels. Here's the fascinating part. These myths haven't gone away. They've just evolved. Money? It's still here, stronger than ever. Only now we argue about whether the US dollar, the euro, or Bitcoin will dominate. Empires? They've transformed into global institutions, the United Nations, the European Union, multinational corporations. These aren't called empires, but they unify humanity in very similar ways. Religion? Traditional faiths still shape billions of lives. But new religions have emerged too. Think about ideologies like nationalism, humanism, or even capitalism. These aren't gods, but they function like religions, shared belief systems that tell us what's right, what's wrong, and what matters most. And here's a fun example. Sports. Look at the Olympic Games or the World Cup. Millions of strangers rally under flags, colors, and chants. For a few weeks, they feel united by belief in their team or nation. On one level, it's just a ball rolling across a field. But in our minds, it's something sacred. That's the power of shared myth. The double-edged sword. So what's the big takeaway here? Harari reminds us that the same myths that unify us also divide us. Money builds global trust, but also deep inequality. Empires connected cultures, but crushed them too. Religions gave meaning, but sparked wars. It's not the myths themselves that are good or bad. It's how we use them. Here's where it gets personal. Every day, you live inside these unifying myths. The passport in your pocket, just a story, but one that decides where you can and can't go. The money in your bank, just a belief, but one that buys you food, shelter, and status. The moral values you hold, shaped by religious or secular myths that your society taught you. The question is, which of these stories do you choose to live by? Do you blindly inherit them, or do you step back and ask if they serve you and the world around you? Because here's the truth. If enough people stop believing in a story, it collapses. The Roman Empire, the divine right of kings, the Soviet Union, all were once powerful myths. All disappeared when people stopped believing. The unification of humankind was built on shared myths. Money gave us universal trust. Empires gave us connection and scale. Religions gave us moral order. Together, they allowed billions of strangers to cooperate. But every story cuts both ways, uniting and dividing, creating and destroying. The lesson for us? Humanity runs on stories. And the ones we choose today will shape tomorrow's world. Lesson 4. The Scientific Revolution. Picture the year 1500. The world is still mostly ruled by faith, tradition, and old authorities. If you got sick, people said it was God's will. If a comet streaked across the sky, it was seen as an omen. The idea that humans could control nature, predict the future with experiments, or fly through the air? Laughable. And yet, within a few centuries, humans would discover vaccines, split the atom, invent electricity, and step on the moon. What changed? Harari calls this the scientific revolution. And it began not with answers, but with a shocking new attitude. For the first time in history, large numbers of humans admitted, we don't know. The humility of ignorance. Before science, knowledge was seen as fixed. Everything worth knowing was already in sacred text or ancient wisdom. Scholars didn't search for new truths, they preserved old ones. But around the 16th century, Europeans began to think differently. They started to say, maybe we don't know everything. Maybe the world is full of mysteries waiting to be discovered. That simple admission, we don't know, was revolutionary. Because once you accept ignorance, you start seeking, you ask questions, you experiment, you measure, you test, and slowly, you build new knowledge. This method observation, hypothesis, experiment, evidence became the foundation of modern science. Knowledge equals power. But science wasn't just about curiosity, it was about power. Kings and merchants quickly realized that knowledge could create wealth and dominance. Discover a new medicine, and your people live longer. Build a better cannon, and your army wins wars. Invent better ships, and your empire grows. Science, capitalism, and empire formed a triangle of progress. Explorers mapped the globe. Merchants funded expeditions. Scientists studied new lands, plants, and animals. Empires expanded, and the cycle fed itself. For example, when European ships reached the America, they didn't just bring back gold. They brought back potatoes, tomatoes, and corn. Scientists studied them, farmers grew them, populations exploded. That's the power of science plus empire. Medicine, from spirits to germs. Let's zoom in on medicine. Before science, disease was often blamed on spirits or sin. Treatments were prayers, charms, or rituals. Sometimes they helped, but often they didn't. Science changed everything. Scientists discovered bacteria, viruses, and the mechanisms of the human body. Suddenly, doctors could do more than pray, they could cure. Smallpox, once one of humanity's deadliest diseases, was eradicated. Antibiotics turned infections that once killed into minor inconveniences. Vaccines extended lifespans. Billions of lives were saved. Think about it. If you've ever taken antibiotics, had surgery, or even put on a bandage, you're benefiting from the scientific revolution. Technology, the engine of change. Now look at technology. For most of history, human power came from muscle, wind, or water. Then science unlocked fossil fuels. Coal-powered steam engines, oil-powered cars and planes. Electricity lit up cities and powered machines. The Industrial Revolution, factories, trains, cars, was the child of science. It transformed daily life. For the first time, ordinary people could live with conveniences kings never dreamed of. Running water, electricity, refrigeration. And today, science has given us smartphones more powerful than the computers that guided Apollo 11 to the moon. The shattering of old beliefs. Science didn't just give us power. It reshaped how we see ourselves. Copernicus showed the Earth isn't the center of the universe. Darwin showed humans aren't separate from animals. We're part of evolution. Freud suggested we aren't even fully in control of our own minds. Each discovery humbled us. We weren't the center. We weren't unique. We weren't fully in control. And yet, with each humbling, we gained more understanding and more power. The double-edged sword. Here's the catch. Science is neutral. It gives us tools, but it doesn't decide how to use them. That's up to us. The same discoveries that gave us medicine also gave us biological weapons. The same physics that gave us electricity also gave us nuclear bombs. The same chemistry that gave us fertilizers also gave us pollution. Science is like fire. It can warm your home or burn it down. Think about today. The internet connects billions, but also spreads misinformation. Artificial intelligence can save lives with medical diagnoses, but also threatens jobs. Renewable energy promises a cleaner planet, but fossil fuels still dominate. Science gives us power, but it doesn't give us wisdom. That's the human responsibility. So what does this mean for you? It means growth comes not from pretending to know everything, but from admitting what you don't know and being curious enough to seek answers. The scientific revolution reminds us progress begins with humility. The words, I don't know, are not weakness. They're the starting line of discovery. The scientific revolution transformed humanity. By admitting ignorance and seeking evidence, humans discovered medicine, technology, and power beyond imagination. But science itself is neutral. It's a tool. The lesson for us is this: curiosity fuels progress, but wisdom decides how we use it. Lesson 5. The future of humankind. Let's imagine the year 2100. A child is born, but unlike any baby in history, she isn't just the result of nature's lottery. Her DNA has been carefully edited. Scientists removed dangerous genes for disease, added enhancements for intelligence, boosted her immune system, and maybe even tweaked her physical appearance. She may live to 150. She may never know cancer. She may merge her brain with artificial intelligence, pulling information from the cloud the way you search Google today. Sounds like science fiction, right? But Harari argues it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. This is where Sapiens stops being history and starts being prophecy. If the cognitive revolution made us human, and the agricultural and scientific revolutions made us powerful, then the next revolution might make us something entirely new. Harari suggests we may be seeing the end of Homo sapiens as we know them and the rise of something beyond, Homo Deus. Biotechnology. Rewriting the code of life. For most of history, humans had no control over biology. Your height, your health, your talents, all decided by nature. If you were born sickly, unlucky, or fragile, that was your fate. But now, we're learning to edit the very code of life. Tools like CRISPR let scientists tweak DNA, like programmers edit computer code. Already, researchers have corrected genetic diseases in labs. Imagine parents designing children the way we design apps, picking traits, removing flaws, adding enhancements, longer lifespans, sharper memory, faster reflexes. That raises a haunting question. If only the rich can afford upgrades, will humanity split into castes, the natural and the engineered? Will inequality grow not just in wealth, but in biology itself? For the first time, evolution is no longer blind. It's becoming conscious. And that changes everything. Artificial intelligence. Outsourcing the mind. Now let's talk about AI. For centuries, machines replaced human muscle. Plows, engines, robots. But now, machines are replacing human minds. Algorithms diagnose disease better than doctors. AI programs compose music, write essays, even create art. Self-driving cars threaten to replace millions of drivers. The danger isn't that AI will rise up and hate us, like in the movies. It's that it won't care about us at all. An AI doesn't need sleep, food, or happiness. It can analyze data faster than any human. Once AI surpasses human intelligence, what role will we play? And here's the scary part. AI could make most jobs obsolete. What happens when machines do everything more efficiently? What happens when humans are no longer useful? Harari warns of a useless class. Billions of people left without meaningful work or purpose, while elites merge with AI and pull further ahead. The search for happiness. But here's the twist. Even with all this power, humans still struggle with the same question we've always had. Are we happy? Hunter-gatherers lived simply, but their lives were full of meaning, connection, and freedom. Farmers worked harder, but built civilizations. Industrial workers built modern wealth, but often at the cost of joy. Today, we have medicine, technology, endless entertainment, and yet, rates of anxiety and depression are rising. So the final frontier may not be space or technology. It may be happiness itself. Can science hack happiness? Some researchers believe we'll use biotechnology not just to cure disease, but to rewire the brain's chemistry for joy. Imagine a pill or a neural implant that guarantees constant contentment. Would that be heaven? Or would it rob life of meaning? Homo Deus? the next species. Harari's boldest idea is that sapiens may not survive as sapiens. We may upgrade ourselves into something unrecognizable. Imagine a world where humans merge with machines, half organic, half digital beings. Or where elites live centuries, while ordinary humans live and die as before. Or where AI evolves into a superintelligence that doesn't need us at all. In that case, our role in history might end not with extinction, but with transformation. Homo sapiens could give birth to a successor, a godlike species that shapes the future. But here's the haunting question. If that happens, will the sapiens alive today matter? Will our values, our stories, our dreams mean anything in a world run by something beyond us? So what do we do with all this? Harari doesn't offer easy answers, but he leaves us with a challenge. Instead of asking what do we want to become, we should ask what do we want? Because the technologies we build are guided by the stories we believe. If we believe money is everything, we'll design systems for profit. If we believe connection matters, we'll design for empathy. The future isn't written. It's a story we're telling right now. The future of humankind may not belong to Homo sapiens. With biotechnology and AI, we're gaining godlike powers. We could cure disease, extend life, and design new beings. But we could also create new inequalities, new dangers, and even make ourselves obsolete. The lesson? The biggest question isn't what we can build, but what we should build. The stories we choose today will shape humanity tomorrow. We've traveled across 70,000 years of human history. Let's pull the threads together. First, the cognitive revolution. Our brains changed, and suddenly we could imagine. We invented myths and stories that let us cooperate in ways no other species could. That's why we survived, why Neanderthals disappeared. The world we live in today, money, governments, brands, human rights, is still built on stories. Second, the agricultural revolution. Farming fed more mouths, but it didn't necessarily make life happier. We traded variety and freedom for labor, routine, and inequality. Humanity grew in size, but individuals often suffered. The lesson? Growth without happiness isn't progress. Third, the unification of humankind. Shared myths like money, empires, and religions allowed billions of strangers to trust each other. They built civilizations, but also fueled wars and inequality. The stories we believe can unite us or divide us. Fourth, the scientific revolution. By admitting ignorance and embracing curiosity, we unleashed discoveries that transformed the modern world. Science gave us medicine, technology, and power, but also nuclear bombs and climate change. Science is neutral. It's up to us to use it wisely. And finally, the future of humankind. Biotechnology and AI may end Homo sapiens as we know them. We may design new species, merge with machines, or even chase immortality. But the big question isn't just what we can build, it's what we should build. The story of Sapiens is this. Humanity is defined by imagination. Our ability to create stories, believe them, and live inside them has shaped everything. Our past, our present, and our future. So where does this leave you? It leaves you with a choice. You may not be designing DNA or building AI, but you are living inside stories. The story of your career, the story of your relationships, the story of what success means. The question is, are those stories serving you, or are you serving them? Here's my challenge. Pick one story in your life and question it. Maybe it's the story that success equals money, or that business equals worth, or that your identity equals your job title. Ask yourself, is this story true? Or is it just one I inherited without choosing? If you find it's not serving you, rewrite it. Choose a better one. Because the greatest lesson of Sapiens is that stories are powerful. But we're not just characters. We are also authors. What story will you tell with your life? Thanks for spending your time with us today as we explored Sapiens, a brief history of humankind by Yuval Noah Harari. If this video opened your eyes, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share your biggest takeaway in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss the next scoop. And if you want to go deeper, I'll leave a link in the description where you can grab the book for yourself. Trust me, it's worth reading. Finally, if you enjoyed this, check out my breakdown of peak mind or atomic habits. These pair beautifully with Sapiens, because once you understand humanity's big story, the next step is designing your own.